This episode of the Better To podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of the Better To Burnout series, which includes her latest releases of Fairy Tales and I Love You and Is Love Just Another High. Welcome to the Better To podcast. I'm Donna, your host. Today's guest is Chris Cuffaro. Chris, well, you may not know his name, but if you listen to music and you read magazines, you most likely know his work. Chris, well, we talk about a lot of things, including his time he spent working with George Michael, working with Nirvana, and, well, many, many more. So tune in. You might have heard my voice hosting the Better To podcast, but did you know I'm also the mastermind behind the Better To Burnout book series? The stories unravel the lives of Nigel Hartigan, the groovy bassist of Sambuca Fedora, the stunning singer-model Ava Richards, and the suave record executive singer Russell Langford. Love, romance, and drama run rampant as their lives tangle up. But brace yourself, folks, because not every tale has a happy ending. Snag your copy today from most online booksellers. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. Well, it's better than being a Monday. This is for sure.
Yeah, that is true.
So you are, most of my guests or most of my people that are listening are not going to know who you are, but I have followed you for a while on Instagram. They don't know you by name. Let me be fair. Go ahead.
Let me just put it this way. Everybody on the planet has seen one of my photos. Yes. They just don't know it's me.
Exactly. That's what I was going to.
I've said it for the last 15 years. I literally tell people, you've seen my photos. I bet you any money you've seen one of my photos. I could be in the middle of the outback of Australia and just say to some stranger, have you seen this photo? They go, yep. And I go, there you go.
Exactly. And that was my whole wrap in there, because the whole fact of the matter is during the 90s, especially during the 90s, but you've had a long storied career for like 50 years. You were, I would say, the infamous rock photographer back then.
No, that hurt. You just hurt me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. No, I didn't mean anything bad by that, but I'm just like,
I know, I'm kidding. So, no, I have this thing. It's like I always tell people, I'm still 12 years old. You have to understand, inside my head, I still think I'm 12. But I have this thing about being called a rock photographer, a music photographer, a entertainment photographer, celebrity. I am just plain photographer. I tell people all the time, if you saw my work, music is a third of my work. It's like that much of that. And yes, it's what I got to be. My name was in the music space, but I've done so much more. So people, you should see my publicist in Australia. She's knows this for years. And if somebody will say to me, in an interview, Chris, you're a music photographer. My publicist is like in the background, no, don't say that to him. Because I'm not going to walk out, but I just might start crying, and it's really embarrassing.
Well, I meant no disrespect, because you're an awesome photographer. I went through your portfolio, but I'm thinking in general, because I do write rock romance, that if somebody's going to really hone in on you, that's where they're going to go. I mean, you did No Doubt, Pearl Jam, Weiland, Perry Farrell. You had this whole cavalcade of people, but you also did Johnny Depp.
Yes. I again, the actors started way back. I think I started shooting actors before I started shooting music. So if I think about it, I moved to LA in 1982. Okay. I was 21 when I moved here. So I moved to LA to be a fashion photographer, and that lasted one day.
Why not New York?
That was the reason why I didn't become a fashion photographer. The day I got to LA, my boss sat me down and said, what do you want to do? And I was working at this black and white lab, a very famous black and white lab that is still around to this day. And he just said, what do you want? I go, I want to be a fashion photographer. And mainly it was because I wanted to shoot girls, because I've been shooting girls since I was 12. And he just said, this is the wrong city. You know nothing about fashion, and it's not going to work. And he just shot my dream down within the first day. And he goes, you better think about something else. And I said, okay. So that's when the journey began.
But the journey actually began when, how old were you when you got your first camera?
Here's the crazy. I always tell people I didn't get buy my first camera till I was 18,
Okay.
but I started shooting at 10 and there's borrowing school cameras and stuff. I started my business at 12. And then I never went to school. Who needed math and English? I was going to be a photographer. I used to tell my English teacher, I used to play golf on the weekends with my teachers because that's what I did for fun. And they would tell me I was going with my dad, and they would tell my dad, your son wasn't in school this week. And he'd be like, I don't care. And then they'd look at me, why weren't you in school this week? I go, I was shooting. I was, doing photography. And they were like, you need to do better on your English. I said, what do I need to know words for? A picture's worth 1,000 words. So I said, I'm going to write millions. And they would just like roll their eyes and tell me to hit the damn ball.
Did you ever go back and see any of these people after you started hitting?
No,
Okay. Just curious.
no, I not, I would say ran out of Northern California, but when I left and did not look back. I'm still friends with two close friends from high school, and that's it. Otherwise than that, I did not look back.
I get it. When I left Shreveport, I was like, bye. I
Yeah.
went back, I think, once or twice, and that was it.
Well, I've gone back and stuff for different reasons. I actually was stuck one time. I was there 10 years after graduation, and my friends talked me into going to my high school reunion. And that was I graduated in 78. So in 88, I went to my high school reunion, and I got voted the person who changed the most, which I got a coffee mug for that.
Mhm.
But I was like, they were all shocked because I was in the middle of the George Michael tour. I was, just got back from, I think, Australia. I started doing drugs, and they were just like, "Oh my God, Chris!" What? They were just freaking out and about my life and stuff, and I just was laughing like, "Whatever, this is my normal."
Well, now that you brought George Michael up, let's talk about
Yeah.
him.
George who?
Oh, come on. We all know who George Michael was, especially in the last, in the 80s. Yes, it was Wham at first, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
As soon as I Want Your Sex came out, that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah. No, so I have lots of George Michael fans that are friends. I just wrote a blog post about this, about the support I get from what they're called the Lovelies. The support I get from the Lovelies is unbelievable compared to any other fan group or fans of musicians. I love my George Michael fans. When I did in 2018, I did the George Michael exhibition in Sydney, Australia at Black Eye Gallery. I thought nothing of it. It was the third exhibition when I started my project, thinking, oh, okay, whatever. It's going to be whatever, like just another exhibition. It became Mecca for George Michael fans. They flew from all over Australia. They flew from New Zealand. They flew from Asia to see that exhibition.
Wow.
It was Mecca, literally pilgrimage time. And I had to go every day to the gallery, and I met these amazing women. One of them who is my best friend to this day, and I just met, all these amazing women. I got to tell the story.
Okay.
People are going to listen to this or watch this. The first day before we opened the doors, one of the most, this is why I love my life and I love what I do and what I've done. Just everything is amazing. But I walk outside the gallery. We haven't even opened the doors yet. Everything's hung. Everything's looking great. I walk out the thing to make a quick phone call. My camera crew's shooting, setting up some stuff. And I walk outside, make this call. I turn around and there's this woman like leaning next to the building, trying to peek into the window because we had this big faith photo in the window and stuff. And she's just blown away by everything. And she looks very scared. And I walk up to her. I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "I can't go in." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "I just miss him so much. And I love George so much. And this is so difficult." And so I said to her, "Well, I'm the photographer." And then she started crying. And I held her hands and I said, "How about we go in together?" And I said, "This is a celebration of George. This is what we want you to feel. We want to celebrate him. And this is why I'm doing this." So I held her hand and I walked her into the gallery. She was the first woman in. And I walked her through the whole exhibition, told her stories. At the end, I mean, I was probably with her for a good 45 minutes to an hour. And all these other women started showing up. And I gave her a big hug at the end of the whole thing. She gave me a big hug, and she just said, "Thank you, Chris. This is the best day of my life." And I went, "Well, it's mine too. So just enjoy, please, but celebrate." And I gave her a catalog, and She was amazing. It was amazing. And that was I didn't know at the time that was the beginning of an incredible 3 weeks of fans and friends now. And since then, like I said, there's a lot of them become friends. I see them on every trip. We're going to brunches and hanging
Nice.
out, and they all have George Michael Prince in their houses, and they tell everybody about me, and I'm like their one celebrity friend. And
But that's cool. I mean, it's very cool,
yeah,
and it shows how genuine you are.
I am very.
I mean, because I'm
I tell
sure.
people all the time, I don't play games. That's why I don't belong in Los Angeles. The day I moved to LA, I said, I don't play games. I don't bullshit. I don't do that. And my boss goes, well, you're in the wrong city. You need to move away. I was like, what?
Well, I mean, Hollywood is known to play for game playing, so
Yeah, they're full of shit here. Everybody is. That's rule number one in LA is assume everybody's full of shit.
how do you find real people out there?
It's not easy. It's not easy. I've been here 44 years now, and I'd say it's not easy. You've had ups and downs with it, through the years. Luckily, I have a core, what I call my family, of 4 people that are very important to me, and that's it. I built my family. I always tell people I built my family, and I'm amazed. I'm lucky, beyond lucky. But LA is unique. LA is there's nothing like it. I just was talking to a friend last night about how she's trying to decide if she wants to come back. And I just said, you can handle it now. You're older, you're wiser. You've been through this and been through that. Maybe this is the time, it's not easy here for a lot of reasons.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, when you look at all the people that you have taken pictures of,
Uh-oh.
well, no, I'm actually going to ask something very bizarre.
Like
Is there?
Michael Hutchins was the worst. He owed me $50, never paid me back. Kurt Cobain was horrible. George Michael, the ultimate worst one. I'm just kidding. Everybody, I'm just kidding.
I know you are. I'm just sitting here going, yeah, right. No, what I was going to actually say, because you actually mentioned a bunch of people that have passed.
Yep. Don't even get started on that
No,
one.
is there anybody that has passed that you wish you could have taken a picture of?
Oh God, that list is a mile long. So when I first moved to LA, and when I started tuning music around 1984, I immediately, because I'm a music fanatic, I like music more than photography. I grew up in the 60s, 70s in the Bay Area. So we had music, we had Bill Graham promoting. Concerts were everything. My first concert was in 76. If I have a blog post that lists all my concerts in high school. It's amazing. And so I tell people, I always had this, what I still do to this day, a hit list. These are the people I got to get to and shoot, spend time with and shoot them. And when I first started, I had a hit list. Bowie, of course, was on it. Freddie Mercury was on that list. But I was lucky that I got to shoot a lot of my heroes. Within the first 2 years, I got to most of my people. Maurice White, I got to. Philip Bailey, I got to. Stanley Clarke, I got to. Phil Collins. And that's what motivated me was just, I was, I look at the dates sometimes and I go, okay, so I think the last time I saw Earth, Wind and Fire was like 1980, and then within 5 years, I'm in Maurice's house,
Nice.
hanging out with Maurice, taking his picture, talking about music, talking about this. It was weird. I shot, Stanley Clarke, who's a bass player, jazz bass player, was my hero when I was a kid. I loved the bass when I was a kid. And Larry Graham, I shot him like in 86, 85, I think. I was meeting my heroes. So it was just like, oh my God, this is the greatest job ever. It really was. I shot album covers for these people. I'm part of their history. So there were a lot of artists, and there are now. Like I would die to shoot Billie Eilish. I would die to shoot Taylor Swift. I mean, I would just die. And I think they would like me, and I think we could do some good work together. But there's always been somebody. Do you know what I mean? People say to me, oh, Chris, you've done a lot. I go, yeah, but for everyone I've shot, I can think of 2 that I didn't. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I mean, I can only imagine what you would have done with Bowie or Mercury. I can only imagine the image you would have created.
Yeah, it would have been, let's use Michael Hutchins as an example because you like Michael. And Michael's one of those people, a lot of artists that I shot, I've talked about in the past about how they just have that special something. And Michael's the kind of guy that you just point the camera at and you can not even look through the camera, not even focus, not even care. Iggy Pop was one of that same way. You could just click, 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 and you Doesn't matter if the picture's in focus. It doesn't matter if it's cropped right, because it's Michael Hutchence.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's
Right.
Michael Hutchence. There's just a handful of those artists that I shot. Iggy is another one of the big ones. You can do anything with Iggy and just be like, it's Iggy. It doesn't matter. But Chris, it's upside down and out of focus. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
You
He
know?
doesn't care either. I mean, I would
No,
assume
he
he's,
doesn't.
yeah. Michael, I do have a question about Michael's photo shoot. What led up to the mask?
So I'll tell the story behind this. There's all these stories on my websites and on my app and stuff like that. But basically what had happened was I had met Michael in '88 in the middle of the George Michael Faith tour. I got to fly to Ottawa, Canada to meet. They were just starting the Kick North American tour. Like, I think this might have been the first show in Ottawa or second show or something like that. So I got to spend a couple days with them. We had mutual friends. Michael and I had mutual friends. Martha, their manager, American manager, I knew, and her best friend was one of my best friends, Kathy, who was a publicist and had worked with Michael and stuff. So we had these mutual friends. So when I met him, it was like, who are you? You're a photographer. Yeah, but we have these friends, and it kind of loosened things up right off the bat. So I got that moment. We had a great time, and everything was great. Fast forward in 93, same thing. He walks in. It's like, Mike, I don't know if you remember. He goes, I remember you, Chris. It was like, it was really kind of cool because when anybody remembers me, it's amazing. It's the biggest thrill of my life is if you remember me. Because usually the people that remember me are the people I owe money to, and that's not good. But Michael, and I knew from friends and resources that Michael had a kinky side. And I've been around kink my whole life, and so I said to my friend, I'm going to go to the Pleasure Chest, which is a sex store here in Hollywood. I think it's still around. It was on Crescent Heights and Santa Monica Boulevard. And I went and bought the mask. I bought a blindfold. I think I bought one other thing. I forget, but I brought it with me. So we did all the shots with him with the t-shirts and the shirts off and the jacket. We were going through, everything was going great. Michael was sweet as can be. And we were laughing, have just a great day. So at the end, I just said, so Michael, I bought this. And he looked at me and smiled. And I just said, would you wear these for a portrait or two? And he said, yeah, that'd be so cool. And he, true artists like him, they're not afraid. No. They're just like, I'm going to, especially, I explain this to a lot of musicians. And when they listen to me, they should, because I tell them all the time, you have license to do things that most normal people can't do.
True.
I've used to yell at my favorite guitar player is Dave Navarro. I used to yell at him, Dave, you can wear leather pants and walk around with no shirt on and get away with it. Like, if I do that, people are going to laugh at me and I'll never work again. So it's like Michael could do that. Michael could wear a brown paper bag and doesn't matter. It's Michael Hutchence. I was blessed in that session when we did the exhibition in Australia at the end of 2019 before COVID. I loved the response was amazing. I love the fact that that session, I was the only time I ever did an exhibition on one session. That's it. But that gallery became Mecca for for Michael Hutchence fans. And a lot of tears. That was the thing that bummed me out. A lot of women crying. I told the gallery owner, I said, I think we should have some boxes of Kleenex around the studio. a lot of cheers. So it was beautiful. And I always tell people the joke, it was the funniest at the artist talk. I don't think I have part of that clip on my website, but a lot of my George Michael friends showed up to the artist talk. So of course I had to be a smart ass and tell them all, Michael was the best and the best performer, the best lead singer, better than anybody and everybody, and did better photo shoots than George Michael and not nicer than George. I got the dirtiest looks. Sure. I mean, it was like, I was afraid to walk outside the gallery. They would have killed me.
One thing I've never really talked about, but it is about Michael. First time I ever ran across Michael, my friends and I, we were living in Shreveport, And
Yeah.
6 of us decided to go down to New Orleans to see NXS. This was 1986. So this is the
Oof.
Listen Like Thieves era,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
before Kill.
Exactly. Yep.
So 2 of us get there earlier because we came by car. The rest were coming by bus. So we decide to, because we're staying at the same hotel with them, by the way. So we decide, it's dusk. My friend and I decide to go sit by the pool. There's nothing happening. It's fine. It's August. Nothing's happening. And all of a sudden, Michael comes out with his girlfriend, Michelle, wearing nothing
Yep.
but a Speedo.
Yep.
It was just
That's
like
Ozzy.
And I mean, I wasn't so much into Michael at that point, but it was just kind of like,
But
okay, so what do we do here? And so we sat there. They got in the pool. They started making out. It's like, okay, we need to leave.
yeah.
We need to leave. We got to meet
No.
him a day later, but yeah, it was just like
I would have told you to go ask for a 3-way. Is what I would ask you to do.
At that time,
or foursome. He would have been into it. I swear to God, he would have had no problems.
At that time, I would have, because I was a little bit skinnier and more attractive.
How old were you then?
I was just 18, almost
Perfect.
19.
He would have loved you. He would have loved you. You missed your opportunity. I'm sorry to hear that.
But now he's an inspiration to my book. So, it's all good. Yeah. It's all good.
Michael, I have these questions all the time, all the people you shot. There was nobody like Michael. Mm-hmm. Nobody. And out of all the people that have died on me, and a lot have, famous ones, non-famous ones, musicians that you don't know, he's the one that hurt me the most. Because to this day, I know it, and it's kind of more come to that conclusion. It was an accident. It wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
And it hurts me to this day. Because there was no one like him.
No.
And when I'm down in Australia, which I go there a lot, and I hope to be going back in a few months, I talk about love. It's the whole country loves him. Like, it's crazy, and they all miss him. Everybody misses him, and the music. I miss the music because I think he was a brilliant lead singer. I think the band was brilliant. I've talked to him. I remember had a conversation once with Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20. He's a good friend, and we sat and talked about Michael because he loved Michael too. Like, he was just a big NXS fan too. I always tell people, I don't know anybody that doesn't like NXS.
It's funny though, the younger generations, if I mention NXS, they kind of look at me like, what? It's like, dude.
I get that all the time.
And Michael's own solo record, I mean, I would have loved to seen what he could have done had he,
the solo, I think the solo record is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think Danny did a great job. I just talked to Danny a few weeks ago. I've been helping him with that project. I think Danny did a great job. I think the music is good. It's not NXS, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. But you can see Michael, even with Max Q.
I was going to say, did you listen to Max Q?
Yeah, Michael just was, like I think any great artist is exploring mm-hmm. their passion. Mm-hmm. Like I always tell people, don't get mad at me if you see pictures of, of trees and mountains, because I'm exploring my creativity.
Exactly.
I always tell people, everybody knows me for my music work, but that's just a third of my body of work. It's not even the best stuff. My best friend thinks my music work sucks. That tells you how much he loves me.
I looked at your European photos. They're great. Yeah. In Paris and everything at the Eiffel Tower. I mean, granted, yes, the Eiffel Tower has been photographed many a times, but it's your own take. And that's what people lose when they think about art. They don't necessarily think, because yes, I flunked art my freshman year in high school because my teacher and I had a personality conflict.
Yeah, well, I've been there.
Yeah, when I changed schools, I excelled in art. So art is truly in the eye of the beholder. That statement is very
Correct.
True. And so,
yeah. But I also believe just because the world we live in, most of art today is content. It's not art.
True.
Everything's diluted. But I feel like for me as an artist, I don't even like calling myself that. I just call myself, a starving artist is my pride and joy. But I just believe that, it's like all my friends that are musicians or photographers or directors or writers, all the creatives that I know, right? I tell them all the time is don't limit yourself to the one thing. My mentor, I call him my big brother. I met him the day I moved to LA. He's yelled at me for 44 years to push. He's challenged me. He's paid me to do other things. Everything. I've shot every subject matter. I talk about this on my blogs about shoot everything, try everything, experience everything. And there's a couple things that are left on my list that I will get to, but it's about stepping out of your comfort zone, feeling uncomfortable about fucking failing, you know. I grew up with the I don't know if you ever heard of wabi sabi.
Mm.
Look it up, Google it, everybody. When I was in high school, I used to hang out at the Buddhist church and play basketball a lot. My friends had a lot of Japanese friends, and it's close to the neighborhood. And I remember me talking to one of the people there. It wasn't a monk or anything like that, but just people that we just got to know them because you're playing basketball and stuff. And we were talking about, and he taught me the philosophy of wabi sabi, and it's basically, to generalize, I call it's the imperfection. Imperfection is perfection. And that's why if you look at my work, you'll see there's imperfections. It's not perfect. I don't want to be perfect, because to me, I have more soul in a photo than I have perfection. It's like in music. Carlos Santana has more soul in one note than most guitar players have an entire career.
Yeah.
So it's about the soul. So I grew up with that as a kid, in that during my growing up period of photography. So that's been a part of my photography journey, is wabi sabi, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does make sense. And that's the thing, especially nowadays, because with social media, we are constantly given, because people use filters all the time,
Yep.
perfection. And it's not really perfection. I always joke
No.
around. It's like, sure, take your picture, put the filters on, put many, many filters on. And then when somebody meets you in person, they're going to be like, what the fuck happened to you?
Exactly. That's exact. I yell at my photographers that I mentor all the time. Stop trying to be perfect. And you're missing the point of being an artist, and the journey of that being an artist. I've been, like I always tell people, I've been blessed to have met some greats, you know, not just musicians, but actors. I've spent quality time. And with me, when I met the directors, I spent, you know, time with James Cameron. And I would always ask crazy, in the early 80s, working on music videos. That's how I met, you know, George Michael. Was the first music video was Faith. And, you know, Andy Morahan, who directed that, I got to know Andy pretty well. And I got to ask the dumb questions. But I got to work on, you know, video sets with David Fincher and Anton Fuqua and Michael Bay, when they were just doing videos. And those guys, because I'm a curious fuck, that I would ask them questions. Why are you doing this? Why do you light it this way? Why do you shoot it this way? You know, that's how I learned, was just being curious. And so and also actors, I would have conversations, because I got to shoot my heroes. I spent an afternoon sitting down, taking pictures and hanging out and talking to Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau.
Wow.
You have no idea what that was like.
I can
I thought I
imagine.
died and got to heaven. I could have finished my career right then and there, because I worshiped Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau as a kid. So I can go down the list. I can drop names all day, every day. And it's funny. That's why I tell people I'm not a big fan of actors, but these legends that I got to spend time with and shoot, Kirk Douglas, Sidney Poitier was God.
Yeah.
You know, those are actors, not Brad Pitt, not George Clooney, you know, whatever, but it's different.
But there is a difference. I was having a conversation with one of my friends about this the other day, that before social media, people like Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, you knew, I didn't care how old you were. You could have been, you know,
Right.
They had staying power. But with social media, we have such fickleness about fame that you're going to hit it big, and then we don't know who the hell you are next day.
Well, you could be famous for practically nothing these days,
Mm-hmm.
and not having talent. The problem I'm having, and I can rant, this could take days for me to rant, but basically, you're not special, people. Everybody thinks they're special because they have followers and they have likes. When I see social media, all I see, everybody screaming, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me, look at me, please look at me, please look at me, look at me, look at me. That's all I see every day. And I get really annoyed by it. And I think it's bullshit. People think they're famous because they did one TV show or one photo shoot or one song. Doesn't matter to me. You know, when I was a kid, I always tell people this philosophy. And when I first started, I worshiped Richard Avedon, Irving Penn, and David Bailey. And I was taught, you know, let the photos do the talking. That's why I was never in front of cameras. I never did talk to anybody really about my work. I always said, let the photo talk. You want to talk to me? Talk to the photos. And that's how I was brought up. I always tell people my goal since I was 10 was to create the greatest body of work I can. And so far, so good. I'm still got a ways to go yet. But these days, everybody wants attention. Everybody's famous for nothing. Everybody thinks that doing one thing is great. I don't care. You know, a writer friend of mine who's written tons of TV series, him and I talk about all the time. He's older than me, and we talk about how longevity is the number one thing that we believe in. Longevity.
Mm-hmm.
I've been shooting for 54 years. I should get an award just for that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at the bigger picture, it's like Andy Warhol was right. I often joke because Andy Warhol was right. Everybody's going to be famous for 15 minutes, and that's what social media has done to us.
Yep. It's true.
But
it's gotten worse because the problem with social media for me is just that everybody thinks they're special, and they think in their bubble with their fans, their followers, they think they're the only ones. Like I tell the story that a year and a half ago when I was last in Australia, I go to Australia and I'm meeting brilliant musicians, then I go to New Zealand and I shoot 17, 18 of the biggest New Zealand musicians on the planet that nobody knows about here in America. And every one of them is better than everything in America. The music I heard, I saw one of the greatest band. I felt like an idiot. The first shoot I did in New Zealand was a band called Fat Freddy's Drop. They're legends in New Zealand. They're gods in Sydney, gods in Europe. In America, nobody knows. And they're one of the best. I got to go see them play. One of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. One of the best bands I've ever seen. I'm like afterwards, after the show, I was backstage like a fangirl, just going, "Oh my God, you guys are amazing." Publicist is looking at me going, "Chris, calm down." But it was amazing. And I met, there's people here, people just think that they're the only ones. And they think that what they're doing is, and I'm just, keep perspective. That's all I ask. Keep perspective. You know, I wake up every day assuming that nobody knows who I am. That's my philosophy. People know my photos, but they don't know me. And I'm okay with that.
It's like I've only done the podcast for 3 years, which is not that big a deal. And it's like, do I get a lot of listeners? No. Do I have a lot of followers? No. But you know what? I get to have a moment in time with somebody that I don't know.
Right.
And I get to have a great conversation. I mean, I've talked to a neuroscientist in Japan.
Yep.
And when he booked it, I was just kind of like, you want to talk to me? Okay.
But I think for you, I would say, I'm guessing, you know, like I tell people, the reason I do what I do, it's because it's our lives. And I tell people, again, this goes back to all these crazy things that I've gone through in my life. But like, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, first of all. And I think Tony says it best: make your life a masterpiece. Or as I like to say, go big or shut the fuck up. You know, and I had a business manager for 25 years who was basically my mom. And she had a saying that I live by every day. And that was, do the work, shut the fuck up and do the work. And that's why I work all day, every day. I don't settle for good. I don't want good photos. I don't want a good exhibition. I don't want a good shoot. I want great. It really is. That's been my way though, since I was 10.
But that's also because that it's not just a photo for you. It is a passion. It's part of your soul. It's part of who you are. It's like when I write, it's the same thing. It's part of my passion, you know, and I don't care how crappy of a day I'm having. When I log in to talk to somebody, I'm going to give it 100%.
Right.
Like
I tell people all the time, I have all these quotes and rules that I live by, and I have developed through the years, you know, and one of my things is just, I don't do good. I do great. And I never settle on anything. Even when you should see my publicist after an exhibition opening night and it's all these people came, everything's great. I wake up the next day going, that was shit. We could do better. And they just go, stop it, Chris. One of them hit me upside the head one day. Stop it. And I went, oh, okay. But you know, I just have this philosophy, always had, always will, you know, go big or shut the fuck up. I don't do small. I don't do, you know, like even now, my goal is my last exhibition. I want to do, hopefully in 2 years, I want to do the last one. I want to do it at New York City at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't do small, you know? So I tell people like, it's just a mentality that I have. And luckily like I said, I mentor lots of people and I help them with this and all types of businesses. And then I have I have 3 mentors for 40 years now, basically. And they yell at me all the time. I'm all about tough love. So they yell at me all the time. Shut up, Chris, go to work, go do that, go be better. You know, you can't do that. I dare you to do that. I always tell people, but I'm that kid.
Let's go back to go big though, because here's a prime example. So you're shooting Pearl Jam and you say, hey, let me direct your music video.
Right.
That's pretty much going big.
go back. So basically what it was I knew I wanted to direct around 1990. And then into 91, all the things that started happening. And I just remember, back in those days, photographers didn't direct. It's kind of now, now you can be a photographer, director, producer, writer, actor. You could do everything and have that on your business card, a list. Back then you directed or you shot. You didn't cross that line. And so I knew that, and I was nervous about saying that. And finally, I think it was a drunken night in Seattle. I was with Eddie and his girlfriend at the time, Beth, and we went to go see Soundgarden. And I just said to them afterwards, I want to direct a music video. And they were like, you should do it. And Eddie was all like, yeah. And I go, can it be you guys? And he's like, I'll ask the band. And so he was nice enough when he was a friend then, and he was nice enough to talk to the band and the manager, Kelly, and they were nice enough to agree to do it. And I sold everything to pay for it and borrowed money. And, I'm just mad to this day that I lost, what do you call it? I should have kept it. I shouldn't have sold it I got reimbursed from the label so that they can own it. And then they never used it. So I don't care about that part of it. That doesn't bother me because they got Mark Pellington to direct a version of it, which won Video of the Year and did all the stuff. I always thought that was never my issue. My issue is that I just wish I would have kept it, because like I just reached out to them a couple of years ago, to the label, trying to find the film, and they found it for me. And then I wanted to remaster it to 4K. It was shot on 35 millimeter film.
Wow. Okay.
So can you imagine the quality in 4K?
Yeah.
So I asked, and they said they have to ask the band, and the band which I doubt they even know, but the management said no. And it wasn't going to cost them a dime. I just wanted to remaster the whole thing. So they said no. And I said, all right. So that kind of bums me out about it. There's a lot of bummer things about some of that stuff back in those days. I had to learn the hard way. When I was younger, I thought everybody was my friend. And I had to learn that, nope, they're not. They're business acquaintances.
Yeah.
And so
that's a fine line that we walk that I don't think we pay necessarily attention to.
No, I try to train my young people in my life. My intern, who's 19, try to yell at her all the time about that. They're not your friends.
No, especially when someone says, well, you can do this and it'll be for publicity or for that the whole game too, that people have gotten a little bit wiser about, but
right. But I was young and I was passionate and I wanted to shoot everything and everyone. I didn't care about making money. My business manager yelled at me regularly, but back in those days, I just wanted to shoot. I wanted to document. And I tell people all the time, I wasn't thinking, like, I just was passionate. So I thought these people were my friends, and they would come to me going, hey, Chris, if you do this session for us for free today, when we get signed to the record label, we'll call you for the big job, the album covers and the jobs. And then you'll get paid. That happened like once out of every 10 times. They forget you real fast.
Was there anybody that when you got that phone call that you were going to get that session that you were just like, fuck yeah? Was there any, I mean, I'm sure there's many of them, but
yeah, but like anytime I got called, anytime, especially in those days, I was young. I always tell people, just think, I laugh about it all the time, that my most iconic photo is George Michael, Faith, right? That standing with the guitar thing. I shot that when I was 27. Like, it's been downhill ever since. I peaked at 27 and it's slowly been downhill. But yeah, I was young, I was, passionate and eager and, wasn't quite, worldly, about some of this stuff. And the music business, they just use you and they don't care, I survived it for a long time. But then I got burnt by the end of the 90s. I'm done with being used and abused and I need to think about other things. So, but I loved it. Every experience I ever had was amazing. Even the bad ones, looking back on it all, it was all good. It was all good. Everything happens for a reason.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. When it comes to fashion, you did actually shoot for Maxim and you did actually shoot Susan Holmes.
Yes. So I met Susan and Duff around the same time, and actually did a shoot with them together. I always tell people I didn't like introduce them by any means, but we had them at the same studio at the same time on the same day, and they kind of I had a little something to do it. I'd have to ask Duff and Susan about that, but I was always shooting fashion. Like I did stuff for Urban Decay Cosmetics. I had clients here and there doing, clothing stuff but and then I got a layout every now and then in a magazine. I just love shooting girls. I always have, always will. It's what I do. I always tell people, I always tell people, I, I've said this for 100 years, but I always tell people, I think the person who invented the camera, I think the first words out of his mouth were, honey, take your clothes off. So that's my philosophy.
Most likely.
Yeah. As a kid, one of my favorite photographers was a photographer named Ken Marcus. He was the best, I don't care what anybody says, the best photographer for Playboy magazine in the 70s. And he was the man. He did it all. I started subscribing to Playboy when I was like 10, and he was just the man. And I just was like, and I got to meet him and took a workshop with him in 1980, I think it was. And he's the one that got me moved to LA. He said, Chris, you need to be in LA. And I've known him ever since. And
Nice.
he lives in Vegas now. But he was a brilliant nude glamour Playboy photographer. He studied with Ansel Adams for years before he
Wow.
got even into Playboy. But he's one of the best of the best, as far as I'm concerned. But that got me. I always tell people I started shooting from modeling schools when I was 12. That was my business, shooting from modeling schools and stuff. That's just me. And then shooting from Maxim and stuff. Those days, music people were like shocked that I was shooting girls in bikinis. And I
Why?
was like, yeah, what's the big deal? That's what I've always done.
Well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense because I mean, the whole music business is, as we talked about off camera, sex, drugs, and rock and
Yeah,
roll. So
right.
why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't you shoot women in bikinis or less?
Again, this goes back to luckily having my number one mentor, my big brother, as I call him. He used to tell me, don't, and I don't listen to anybody. I don't care who likes my pictures or doesn't like me. I never have, I never will. It's about, I shoot to make me happy.
Mhm.
I follow my curiosity. I've done so many things. I've shot hockey players. I've done flowers. I've done, you name it, the subject matter. I've done it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And you guys can all, see it all when I'm dead and gone at my retrospective. I've had this joke for years where I always tell people when they have my retrospective and they see all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, they're just going to go, this fucker had fun when he was here. And I'm going to be like, yep.
So how
So
how hard was it, when Kobe passed? Because I know you took pictures of
yeah,
Kobe.
it was difficult because I'm sad. I hate when anybody dies, but Kobe, him and I had it out at that shoot because I hate the Lakers
Okay.
passionately.
Okay.
And I've told the story a million times. He just gotten engaged to Vanessa, and I was talking shit to him the whole day. I challenged him to a one-on-one game. He chickened out. I called him a pussy in front of Vanessa. I was ragging him for the whole day. And then my client was pissed as all hell at me. She's one of my really good friends, but she was like, stop it, stop it. My assistants were laughing, but that's how I am against when it comes to LA teams. I did the same thing to some Dodgers back in the time when I had to shoot them. But Kobe, at the end of the day, though, Kobe and I sat down and had a great, about a 15-minute talk about work ethic. And I always tell people I hated him because he's Kobe Bryant and he played the Lakers, but I have mad respect for his game and his philosophies and everything about the man. If he played for my team, I would have worshiped him. But we had a good talk about work ethic, and then he left and his people left, and then the magazine, my friend just yelled at me. My friend Lori's like, I can't believe you did that. She goes, if I had known you hated the Lakers, I wouldn't have you do this job. And I'm sorry. I have to do it, man. Because in NoCal, in Northern California, the 11th commandment, I don't know if you know there's 11 commandments, there's not 10. There's 11. And the 11th is thou shalt hate SoCal. So it's sorry, So the best part was the next day, his people called me up and asked me if I would shoot an event for Kobe. Liked me and wanted to know if I could shoot an event for him. And I
Nice.
said, I don't do events, and especially for a Laker. And they said, no worries.
Gonna keep that SoCal hate all the
Yeah,
way, eh?
you do. I don't. Yeah, I was at Dodger Stadium once in the elevator with my two assistants, and Tommy Lasorda walked in the elevator. I was ready to jump him, beat his ass, and my assistants were like, "Don't do it, Chris. Just don't do it." I was like, but it's just how I grew up. No Cal, SoCal was, it still is to this day. It's a big deal.
And Gretzky. Because I know you shot him too.
Yeah, well, I like hockey. I was a big hockey fan as a kid. So, we only had a team there for a short time, the Seals. And then I moved to LA, and that was the first team. And my friend was the publicist at the time. And I just wanted to shoot hockey players. Why guys shoot hockey, play hockey. Anything in my life, when I want to know about something, I use the camera to go figure it out. Oh, why would you want to be, a stripper? Well, let's go take pictures of strippers and find out. It's always what I've done. I've used the camera I always tell people, it's my tattoos. I have a exclamation point and a question mark. And it's this quote from way back in the day is curiosity informs my passion.
Okay.
That's how it works for me.
So if you look at, I mean, like I said, you've taken pictures of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Willie Nelson, there's a story on your site about Willie Nelson and smoking weed with him.
He handed the joint to Emmy, and Emmy Lou handed it to me. My assistant looked at me with bright eyes and said, "I can't believe you're going to do that." And I took a hit. Why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
If I had been sober for 20 years, I would have lost that chip that day. I would not say no to him. I actually, I just posted pictures because his birthday was yesterday and stuff. I tell people all the time, like I'll give props. My friend John Vlotton, he was the publicist at Island Records at the time, hired me to do the job. And I love John to this day. John has his own publicity agency now, but John gave me some great shoots. But spending 2 days, I love the process of creativity. And anytime I got into a recording studio to document or even just hang out, watching the creative process just is amazing. And I think they did that record. And I want to say, I saw an interview with Daniel recently. I think he said 3-4 days, something like that. It was, Emmy Lou, Willie, Daniel Lanois, legendary God producer, and then the musicians that they got, and it was in an old movie theater, a Mexican movie theater, and 2 days I got to spend hanging out and shooting. And at first Daniel was not happy about it, and he gave me dirty looks, and then I just had a moment where I said to him, "Look, Daniel, I'm not here to get in your way. Trust me, I've been around a long time. I won't get in your way." And he then kind of relaxed, and he had to get focused on what he was doing. He just didn't want it to be a distraction to what they were doing. And I wasn't. It ended up not being it. And so I always tell people, I would love to see Daniel again someday. I'd love to see Willie again. Willie's son, Micah, Particle Kid, he goes by, Micah Nelson, played my first Greatest Hits exhibition here in LA.
Wow.
Yeah, Micah. That was bizarre. My producer asked him if he would perform. We had a few performers. My favorite was Lauren Ruth Ward, who's everybody should check out. She's the greatest thing on the planet. We had Josh from Buck Cherry, a good friend. We had Particle Kid and a couple other bands. And a few months later, Micah comes, in return, I'm going to do a photo shoot for you guys. And Micah comes to the studio, and we were doing a photo shoot, and Micah was so nice. He is the nicest guy. His brothers, they're so talented, it's scary. But Micah says to me, "Oh my God, Chris, it's such an honor to shoot with such a legend." I just looked at him and I literally just looked at him and said, "Shut the fuck up." And he goes, "What?" I go, "Just shut the fuck." I go, "Let me explain it to you, Micah. Your dad, legend. Me, loser. Like it's two different things. It doesn't work with me." And he just starts laughing. He goes, "No, I go, don't even, Micah, if you want your pictures taken, shut up." And I just was like, my assistants are laughing. Everybody's just like, "What?" I go, like, "Guys, I don't, no. I'm not a fan of labels like that, even though I get thrown at these days. You're a legend." I'm like, shut the fuck up. Just shut up. My best friend in the world said it best over a year ago. Rolling Stone magazine in Australia supported my Sydney exhibition and my New Zealand exhibition, and they called me a legend. And I called my friend up. I called my brother. I said, "Yo, Rolling Stone just called me a legend. I'm a legend." And he just calmly just goes, "Yeah, Chris, it's only Australia, so it kind of doesn't count." I said, "Oh, you're right. Never mind." He just brought me down.
But you do photograph legends. I mean, the other
Yeah, I
one,
do. Yeah,
I mean,
that I do. I shoot legends. My photos are iconic, but I'm just an idiot with a camera.
George Harrison.
Yeah, George, my hero. My hero. That story, I think it's on my, yeah, it's on
Mhm.
on the website. It's all, I always tell people, got to download my app for all these stories. But George, my favorite Beatle. Who was your favorite Beatle?
Paul.
Really?
Only because
He was number two for
only
me.
because I was a bass player.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. Paul's number two. I still would die to shoot him. I mean, even though he's older than fuck these days, but
And like,
getting to
like Angela
George,
Lansbury.
yeah, I have to tell this story now. So in 84, I'm not going to go too far back, but 84, 85, I started shooting for Musician Magazine, and the creative director at that time was a man named Gary Kupke. Um, Sad to say, he just passed away about 3, 4 weeks ago. And he was everything. He made me what I am today. I got to say this out. I want people to know this. Gary Kupke made me what I am today, made my entire career. I did one shoot for him. My second shoot for him was Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire. Like, I could tell you a list of like 50 shoots he hired me to do. And then we've been friends ever since. I loved the man. I loved the man. I owe him everything, taught me everything I know about design. He's an icon in the design advertising world. But he calls me up one day and just says, "Hey, I got a shoot for you." I said, "Okay, what is it this time?" I'm thinking whatever. And he says, "It's George Harrison." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up. Are you kidding me?" And this is before cell phones,
Yeah.
before everything. And I'm just like, "What?" Landline. And he says, "Yeah." So but here's the problem though. Bob Merlis, I think, yeah, it was the publicist for Warner at the time. And he goes, "Bob says you're not going to get much time." He goes, "So you got to kind of be ready." I said, "Where are we doing the shoot?" He goes, "You got to shoot at Warner Brothers in the conference room." I said, "I've been in that conference." I'm like, ugh, like, so my assistants and I, get over there the next day. We're set up. We're ready. We're ready. We're going to get 5 minutes. I got like film loaded, ready to go. He shows up and he ends up being the nicest guy ever. We ended up talking for over an hour. We talked in the shot for over an hour. He just hung out, he played Cloud Nine for us. We were the first persons in North America to hear Cloud Nine. The best part though, because my favorite movie in the world is Hard Day's Night. I asked him questions about Hard Day's Night and Richard Lester, the director, and he told me stories. Wow. And then I thought he left the room, and I literally thought, I looked at my assistants and I go, "What just happened?" And they look at me and they go, "I don't know, but it was special." And I said, "I know, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then I got called from Bob like a few days later. "Hey, they're doing a music video. You want to come down and shoot that?" Sure. So I go down and shoot that. And again, there's this other weird moments of, you got to realize I'm 25 years old and I'm shooting a Beatle. Mm-hmm. And, and I just remember like, we're sitting there and the production, we're in this room and it's me, I'm trying to take some pictures, but it's me, George, the producer, the director, maybe another person, like 5, 6 of us in this room. Each guy leaves to do something. And next thing I know, I'm in the room by myself with George Harrison. I'm like, if my friends could see me now, like if I'd only had an iPhone then, and
yes,
God, and we started talking again, and he was just the nicest thing in the world. That was like those moments where you're just like, God, if everybody I love, which is like this, God, I want to shoot them all. And I was blessed. Every hero I had was nice to me. Phil Collins was amazing because I was a big Genesis fan. Maurice White was God. It's just like, it was just, you're meeting these people and they not letting you down. Not one artist has ever let me down, period.
Well, you did say the one that was hard. One of the hardest to work with was a group called New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, but that was only because they were annoying little brats. But
yeah,
I still was fine with them ultimately. Yeah. I mean, they're like, they were kids at the time. It was like this, like, I think that was the end of 88. I think it was.
Yeah, so they were young.
Yeah. I mean, God, they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
But even then I look at that stuff and I laugh that, hey, there they were. And now they're fucking old men.
I found a book, actually. My daughters were big into that. And so I found one of their books the other day and I went through it to make sure none of your pictures were in there because I saw that you had picked up one of the lunch boxes and it wasn't.
At the time they used the photos for tour program. Mainly that was for Winterland production. I did the shoot for Winterland, I'm pretty sure. I had to shoot one of the shows. That was the worst night of my life. me growing up on real music and
Hmm.
real bands and funk and jazz fusion and rock. And then I had to go sit in the pit shooting New Kids on the Block. I was like, kill me now. Um, but it was, they were, and I love the fact that stuff was, that's why I found, I remember that Lunchbox coming out back in the 80s, 89 around there. And I thought, that's so cool. And I never got one at the time. And I saw it on eBay and I go, I got to buy this thing. And, so I just recently got it and it's pretty cool. I always tell, but my pictures have been on some weird things. Let me just put it that way. I found this woman on eBay. I had to tell her to stop, but this woman took my George Michael Faith photo and made a quilt out of it. That was not good, but it was funny.
I showed the lunchbox to one of my friends, and she's like, "I had that lunchbox."
Yeah,
Oh,
I believe it.
the weirdest thing I've seen on eBay is back to Johnny Depp. This was
Yeah,
back in the late '90s. Somebody said somebody was selling his cigarette butts,
yeah,
and I'm like, with a certificate of authenticity. I'm like,
yeah,
really?
yeah. And they
What?
need a certificate, but they need a certificate of authenticity for the certificate of
Yeah,
authenticity.
and what are you going to do with these?
I know. I don't know. People, I've seen my stuff on some weird things through the years, and the mark for the last probably 20 years, the remark I get a lot is, I had that poster on my bedroom wall when I was in high school. I'm like, especially when it comes to the grunge days, Nirvana,
Hmm.
Pearl
Hmm.
Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. I had that poster, and I'm like, okay, great. Or Jane's Addiction, the big one. And I'm like, oh, so you were in high school when I was touring on Lollapalooza?
I got one worse for you. So I was at a television producers convention, and I was marketing a TV show with the company I worked with at the time, and Bob Eubanks and Chuck Woolery were there.
Mm,
And I walked up to them, and I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, "Yeah, I used
yeah,
to watch you when I was a little kid."
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah. I
you
know.
don't think about those things, but I can
I
imagine.
get that. I get it all the time. Like more now than ever,
Yeah.
because I just turned 64 and my intern reminds me she's 19 and she's one of my best friend's daughters and she wants to be a photographer. And I yell at her all the time, shut up. And she's like, because you're like a cranky old man. I go, yes, I am. Get up. Instead of saying get off my lawn, I say, get out of my dark room. And we talk about this stuff all the time, but I get it. I always tell people I understand where I'm at, but I always tell the one thing I've done is I've earned the right to bitch and complain. So I've earned it. But I tell people all the time, it's weird to see, you know, I remember when the first time I saw one of my photos on an album cover in Tower Records, those moments, I always tell people looking back on that, so I'll never lose those moments, those feelings of seeing my picture of, I remember when my first trip to Australia to meet George Michael, they were in the Faith Tour. I flew to Sydney, my first 1988. And to sit there and go through the airport, you go through customs, you get a taxi, you get in the taxi. And now I'm going to meet them at the Intercontinental Hotel. And they had not like big billboards, but small billboards. And, the wraps on walls
Hmm.
of my picture of George Michael at the
Wow.
Sydney Center. And I'm in this taxi going, I've traveled all the way to Australia and I'm seeing my photos of George out in the pub. You're like, what the,
Yeah.
and, it was a lot of those kinds of things, those amazing moments. Pictures being used for, Hall of Fame inductions or pictures being used in different places. And, I don't know. It's always tell people I'm always excited about it. I'm always thrilled. Billboards. I'm seeing my photos on a billboard in Times Square. It was a big deal.
What was your favorite album cover to shoot?
Um, Probably the Stanley Clark one because of what he meant to me. Um, you know, I worshipped. I was a big jazz fusion person in the
Hmm.
'70s. My favorite first concert was "Return to Forever," which was Stanley Clark, Lenny White, Al Di Meola, and Chick Corea. And I loved Stanley Clark. And I worshipped Larry Graham from Graham Central Station and Sly and the Family Stone and stuff. But getting to shoot Stanley's, and then I shot an album cover for a second one for him and for the Clark Duke project, #3. And I was a huge George Duke fan. Because again, it's like those are the people I grew up in the kind of the hood. So I always tell people I didn't grow up on rock and roll. I grew up on funk and disco in a sense. And I grew up on R&B, so meeting those people, that was the big deal for me. And meeting the musicians who played on the records that I loved, shooting the drummer, Jerry Brown, who played on the record with Stanley Clark. It was like just as big as deal as meeting Stanley Clark.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm a
because
big musician fan.
it's all, I mean, that's the thing. When you look at a band, most of the time you think of the singer and that's it. You don't think
Yeah,
of all the layers that go into it.
exactly.
I mean, when we were talking about NXS earlier, I was really excited because at the time I was playing bass. It's like, I'm going to get to meet Gary Beers. Well,
Yeah.
I did get to meet Gary Beers, and I didn't know at the time that the button on my shirt had popped open. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
whole. Not until after my friend's like, "Do you realize your shirt's open?" I'm like, "What?"
I'm I'm just I hate to be mean, but you should have fucked the band. I mean,
I
I
look,
tell people all the time,
I got invited on the tour bus, and I declined.
you just blew it. You blew the whole thing. You
I
would have
was
been
a
a rock star by now.
I was a good girl.
That's the worst thing to be.
I was a good girl who was dressed like a slut because I had a halter
Yeah.
top and push-up bra on,
Yeah,
and
no, I get look,
yeah,
90% of my friends are women,
hmm
and it's been that way since I was 10. I always tell people I have girls' night out regularly. And I tell people all the time, like women, I tell my girls all the time, just go for it. Just have fun because you're gonna get old someday and you're gonna get tired and get crazy. I have a motto I teach to all my youngsters. Like I said, I mentor so many, and then I have three of my friends, their young daughters or my besties. I love them all to death. They're like my own kids because I don't have kids. But I always have this saying that I teach them, and I live by this saying, which is be crazy, be motherfucking crazy. Don't be stupid.
it most likely would have been better if I would have been a little bit more free, but
Yeah, but it's this thing I teach. It's about because it's just about being crazy. I'm crazy, and when people say you're crazy, I go, thank you, appreciate that. I don't think crazy is a bad thing, but I don't be stupid. I don't do stupid. I don't do stupid. I don't do. I never have, never will. To me, crazy is, hey, let's get drunk and do drugs and party our brains out all night long. Stupid is now let's get in the car and drive. No,
yeah,
no, no. So I try to tell there's a difference. Being crazy, you know what I mean? Hooking up with a musician because hey, it's hot and it's cool. Let's have a great time. Great. Stupid is thinking that you're going to marry the guy and get knocked up and get have babies. Like no, no, no. So
yeah. There's a lot of different ways when people think about, there's a picture that was floating around on the internet with Tommy Lee and Vince Neil and a woman.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she's got stories to tell now.
Oh, Tommy, I love Tommy. I got Tommy stories for days. I shot Tommy probably 10 times. I love the guy. He was my hero back in the day because he's like me. We just don't grow up. He just, the first time I shot him in Nashville, Tennessee. And I tell people the story all the time. Backstage, it was my first time in Nashville. I'm hanging out backstage, waiting for the band to show up for sound check. They show up. I'm, waiting. The manager's like, oh, he'll be here. And they show up in the bus. And next thing I know, they walk in holding a big bunch of panties, girls' panties with notes tied to them. And the whole band sits down. And I'm just sitting there waiting, to introduce
Mm-hmm.
myself. And they're reading the notes. The girls are all like, hey, baby, come get us. They're all at the gate, like trying to get in. And they're just, oh, remember her? But they're just having this blast, drinking Jack Daniels, smoking. It's like, it's every cliche possible. I'm just sitting there going, this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. Is like 1985, I think. I'm just, oh my God, what is this all about? And finally, they bring in girls back and kicking them out. And I'll be in the tour bus. I'll be back a little bit, all this crap. And I'm just finally get to talk to Tommy. And he's like, oh, you're going to have to wait till I got my makeup on. And so we'll probably shoot it right before I go on stage. I said, okay. So I was there for like 3-4 hours, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then I got to shoot him, sat him in the bathroom, sat him on the toilet and shot a few rolls of films and you're done. But I love Tommy. Shot him a bunch after that. He's such a nice guy and he's a brilliant drummer.
He is a brilliant drummer. He is. So, is there anybody that we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we're good. I think we got it. I hope I didn't scare you. I mean,
You didn't scare me.
I'm trying to be nice.
I could have talked to you longer. I mean, I could,
Yeah,
but I know you got things
I
to
just tell
do.
people all the time, like, so I'll just say this and wrap if you want to wrap this up. But like, so when I started the Greatest Hits Project 13, 14 years ago. And the reason I did it, if everybody wants to go to my cuffarohits.com or download my app, people, is that I tell people all the time, my Greatest Hits Project is a celebration of music and music photography and my life. The big thing I tell people is all the time is like, it's not about the pictures. It's not about the photos. It's about the stories behind the photos. And to me, the idea started with, I was going to do 5 exhibitions and like call it a day or 6 or something like that. But it's grown into this big thing. And I want to do, if I could, I would do a different exhibition every month for the next 10 years. I'm looking for sponsors, looking for help and all that kind of stuff. Because everybody loves music. Everybody loves music. I travel, I've been around, I tell people all the time, everybody has a music story. Everybody has a first concert. Everybody has this music, things, songs that, are the soundtrack of their lives, as they say. And I just really, I love the fact that, like, I always tell people, I know this is dumb, but when I was a kid, my grandfather used to tell the same stupid stories all the time. He was a police detective in the 40s, and he would tell the same crime stories and I just got bored. And I said I would never be that old guy who would sit around telling you about the times I shot Nirvana. There was this time I shot Nirvana. My friends now tell me to shut the fuck up all the time. They're like, dude, we heard that one, Chris, shut up. I'm like, okay. So, but I don't want to be that guy. So that's why this project, it's all about telling the stories. And now I have the app. That's just going to grow. We're going to do virtual reality exhibitions. We're doing some amazing things coming up. But I wanted to be that thing that if you ever say, hey, Chris, tell us a story about Nirvana, I'm just going to say, go to the app.
Did you, I mean, I read that there was going to be a documentary. Are you actually going to do it?
Yes. So we're working on a documentary series. Ever since we started the project, we've been documenting everything we can. At the beginning, I didn't want to do it. But my mentor said you need to document everything and make a I tried to convince everybody that helps me with this stuff that I should get an actor to play me. I was suggesting Brad Pitt, since we look alike, and I thought he could play me in the documentary, and they all told me that that's not how it works, Chris. And I said, well, so it's so weird. I think about it a lot, where before that, I rarely got in front of a camera. I never talked like this, really.
Mm-hmm.
But because of this project, I'm doing this, and I've done live TV. I've done morning shows, and I'm comfortable with it now. I just had such a low self-esteem about everything. So I always tell people I've grown out of that, and I've gotten better at doing this. I just realized everybody wants to hear my stories, so I just tell stories.
I do have a quick question. Now we're back on there.
Go for it.
So watching Dave, you met Nirvana when they were in their infancy. So now where Dave Grohl is, because I just finished reading his book, where
I hear it's good.
It is good. It's very good. Especially, I listened to the audiobook, so you got to hear it in his own words, which is awesome. But
he talks about his mom, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He does.
Yeah.
He talks about his mom. He talks about how he flew from Australia all the way to Los Angeles to be there for a daddy-daughter dance.
Wow.
And then flew back before it was over to be at a concert in New Zealand. So, yeah. But I guess my question is it wild to see how much he has grown, considering he was...
Because when I met him, he had just joined the band, and he was just this kid, Dave, who didn't have any drumsticks. So I bought him 100 pairs of drumsticks because he had none. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, how do you not have drumsticks? And he's just, I don't have any. He's up in Seattle, and you just got there. And I thank John Silva to this day, their manager, for that shoot. That shoot has done a lot of things for me. I was up in Seattle shooting Queensryche on a Friday, and I had a day off, and it was my first trip ever to Seattle. And I said, John, is there Nirvana around? He said, so he set that up for me, and they got a new drummer. So, I would say I'm proud of him and excited. I have a few Dave Grohl stories, but I'll tell you the last time, which is last year, I have to look at this again. Last year, I guess it was the beginning of it's 2022. Stephen Perkins, the drummer from Jane's Addiction, who I've known for years, he started a record label, and I shot a band for him named Air, and great guys, and really good band, like very good band. Stephen says to me one day, hey, we're going in the recording studio, and we're going to re-record one of the songs on the album, and would you come down and shoot? I said, hell yeah, you don't have to ask me twice. And I said, where's the studio? Here's the address. It's in Northridge. So I go to the studio, I meet the band, they're loading up their gear into this recording space and everything. The producer's getting set up in the producer. I notice on the walls, everywhere on the walls is Foo Fighters shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so I finally walk over to the producer and said, why is there Foo Fighters shit all over the walls here? And why just them? goes, Chris, it's Dave's studio and the band's studio. I said, what? This is Dave's studio? And he goes, yeah. I said, no way. And they go, yeah. I said, oh, okay. How cool is that? So I walk out while they're setting up. I walk out and they're in the hallway looking at all the gold records, this, that, all the memorabilia, the Foo Fighter stuff. And, I'm like, this is super cool. I'm waiting. I can't shoot anything. So I'm just walking around looking at everything. I go to the bathroom and I come walking out of the bathroom and I'm looking at this wall, like a picture, and somebody walks right by me. I turn around and it's Dave. And I go, hey. And he turns around and goes, hey. And I know he doesn't remember me or recognize me. Nobody ever does. So I'm aware of that. So I just go, hi, I'm Chris. And he goes, hi, Dave. And I go, hey, good. And he walks in the room. And I just start laughing. And I just walk in the room, in the recording room. And the band is like freaking out. You have to understand.
Oh, yeah.
You got Dave Grohl and Stephen Perkins in the same room. And the drummer's like wetting his pants in the corner. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I'm laughing at the whole thing. So Steven, who I love to death, is my favorite drummer. They're just start telling stories. And I finally go, well, I got a story. I go, and they're like, yeah, Chris. They knew me and the band's like, thinks I'm amazing or whatever. So I tell Dave, yeah, I remember the last time I saw you. And he goes, and I go, yeah, the backbeat sessions with Don Was up at, what was that, Hollywood? With Sunset Sound, I think. Dave looks at me and goes, what? He's looking at me like, I remember, wait, what? And he's like, you could just see him like searching in his memory. And I go, yeah, and then, yeah, that was one of the best 2 days of my life. And Dave's like, yeah. And Perkins is like, yeah. And I go, and then there was the time that I think I shot you, and I pull up the picture and I show him, and he just looks at me and goes, yes. And he hugs me and he goes, oh my God. And I go, now you remember me? And he goes, yes. And Perkins is all like, how do you not remember Chris? And like, and I'm all like, I go, Perkins, I haven't seen him in like 25 years. So, so we've aged,
Aged, yeah.
And so next thing you know, we're just Dave and Perkins and myself, we're just going back and forth about the memories and the, all the shit and the shoots, and the band is just sitting there like, puppies, just, oh my God. So it was really cool. And I got Dave's email address and then emailed him and said, if he needs anything to let me know. And then shortly after that is when Taylor passed away, and really broke my heart because I had shot Taylor a few times and Taylor was the best of the best. And God, I love Taylor and I miss him. And I know how much it hurts everybody.
Yeah.
That guy was just loved. I don't know a musician that wasn't loved like him.
No, he was loved. So yeah, I was going to wrap it up, and now I got one more question. So Steve Jones in the Neurotic Outsiders.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
That's from one of my favorite people I ever met. He doesn't talk to me anymore, but Guy Oseary, who was running Maverick Records, who worked for Madonna, who now is a big shot manager and manages U2 and everybody. But Guy at the time was young, and he came into Maverick and he hired me pretty much for every artist he signed, except I think the only one I didn't shoot was Alanis Morissette. But I shot the Deftones for him. I shot Neurotic Outsiders for him, and a few others. And he hooked me up with Limp Bizkit with Fred. Guy is one of my heroes. I would say, last time I saw him, I ran into him at a restaurant once and just thanked him for everything. And he's grown up a lot and is married with kids. But when I met him, he was just a little kid, working for Madonna. And he's just one of those guys that I think, I always say nobody has anything bad to say about Guy. Everybody, you mention his name to anybody in here in Hollywood in the music business, they all just smile. He's such one of the best of the best. But he introduced me. He asked me, can you go to Seattle to shoot the Neurotic Outsiders? And I'm like, who the hell that is? And it's Matt Sorum, Duff McKagan, Steve Jones, and John Taylor. I'm like, yeah. So I met him up in Seattle, and I still think, I don't care what anybody says, that picture of Steve Jones is the best picture.
It's a great picture.
And he never looked better, and he even liked him so much. Fast forward many years later, when he's working on his book, The Lonely Boy, I get a text from him on my Twitter DM. Hey, Chris, can you call me? Sure. Like, hey, Jonesy.
Yeah.
That's that weird shit like that. You're like, hey, what's up? he goes, can I get some of the photos? And he uses my photo for his Instagram thing. And he used some of the photos in the book. And I tell everybody, if you haven't seen the Sex Pistols, I think it's on Hulu series. I think it's a 4-part series directed by my favorite director. It's an amazing series. Amazing series. Like amazing. Every aspect of that series is amazing. But Steve is the best. John Taylor connected so much. He asked me to shoot his solo cover, which I did his solo album cover, and JT, I was just like, my girlfriend at the time was like, she worshiped John Taylor. Like, oh my God, can I come to the shoot? I'm like, no. I'm like, no, not even. You stay away and stuff. But of course I let her come, and she got excited because she got to meet John Taylor. But and Matt Sorum, who I still have exchanged emails through the years. I love Matt. He's the nicest drummer ever. And, and Duff, like I said, I shot Duff a couple other times besides that. And he loves those photos to this day. I did that foursome series for the exhibition in LA. And I actually sent it up to Duff a few years ago, that he has it hanging in his recording studio, which makes me proud.
Nice. I will say it's amusing because you shot the cover. So in May of early June of 1995, I was talking to JT and I was telling him, that I played bass and everything. And he was telling me, well, the best thing you do is play and sing. At this point, I am not aware, nobody's aware that he's coming out with a solo project.
Yeah.
So when that all popped up, and I know the cover that you shot, it was just kind of like,
portrait.
Wow, okay. That conversation had more meaning than I actually realized.
Yeah. I just, here's my thing right now. I'm kind of mad at people. I've had this discussion recently where I'm not friends with these people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have time to be friends with these. A lot of photographers are friends with their artist. I didn't have time to hang out and kiss everybody's ass. But recently I've been thinking a lot about how I would love to shoot some of these people again. And I still shoot, I'm shooting as much as I can these days, I'm writing 2 TV series and doing exhibitions, all this stuff. But I keep saying, I would just love to shoot some of these people again, because it was such a pleasure. And I know it'd be better today than when I did shoot them the first time, and plus, I don't know. It's just I keep saying to everybody, it's a weird time of life, getting older and doing this. I always say not everybody has documented their entire life like I have. I literally have the picture from the day I was born to, shooting pictures now. I've documented my entire life. It's crazy. But JT, Matt, that was a great session. I love those pictures to this day. I actually recently went through the session. One of the things I do for the last 5 years, I'm digitally archiving my life's work. And so I go to my vault where everything's stored, all my film, and I pull shoots out every month, spend the entire month scanning stuff to archive it all and have all that, and then I find stuff in the folders that I'm like, I never saw this picture. When did I do this? Oh my God, I don't remember this. So I find things all the time that are really, really interesting. So you can't see, but back here on the floor,
okay,
there's boxes that have to go, back to I'll show you this. Like this is the original Nirvana folder.
Okay. All right.
So inside the folder is, the film and everything from that shoot. So there's proof sheets.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
Famous photos and of the band. So this is all, and the chromes and all the stuff that comes with that. So, I've scanned the best of the best. I've, done what I can with, to archive it. So it's all there, safe and sound. And I do this with all my stuff. And like I said, I always tell people, you can imagine what, 50 years worth of photography looks like. It's pretty massive.
Did you have a lot of bands that would have final say on what pictures were going to be used or not?
Not a lot, a few. George Michael, for one, him and I always tell people, I love, when I talk about this with my George Michael fans, they love it. But I sat in hotel rooms with George all the time, just go, I'd shoot a concert and then I'd get the film processed the next day. And then I'd be like, George, when you got time? And I'd come up to the room with him, slide pages and light box, and we'd go through stuff. And it was always fun. Because it was great, because it was my times with George and nobody else. Those were my favorite times. That, backstage, it was George and there's crew and he's doing, but when I was in the room with him going through photos, and I always tell people, when I first met George, he had if you know that time of his life, he had a really thick, tall wall around him.
Yeah.
He's very, after the Wham days, he got burned by the labels and all that crap. And I understood it. I totally understand. His manager at the time, who's my mentor to this day, Michael, and George's girlfriend at the time, Kathy, was my best friend. So I understood it all, and we had a lot of mutual friends. So like I knew it would take time, and it did. It took a little time for him to trust me as a photographer, then as just as a person, then becoming a friend. And so once I earned that trust, I saw the George that I know and love to this day. I always tell people I thank him every day for he taught me how to have fun, big time.
That's a gift. That is very much a gift.
Big time. And he changed my life. I mean, up until George, I was doing lots of stuff and I was working, but George Michael, in 1988 was the biggest thing on the planet, with 5 hit singles and videos. And I was the biggest thing there I was, doing all the photography. I remember the last time I saw him at the 25 and Live tour, I just said, thank you, George. You changed my life. I owe you. The same thing I owe my friend Gary Kupke. So I always tell people why I help people to this day is I got here because I got help. I can give you a list of 10 people that made me what I am today. I worked hard and I did a good job, but even that wouldn't have got me where I am today, not without the help that I got.
Well, that's important that you look back with gratitude and you're thankful for what you've gotten.
I tell everybody every day, I say thank you every night before I go to bed. It's my prayer. Just thank you, thank you, thank you 3 times. But you have to, because people like, this, I always tell people as life. I mean, as we get older, you start to realize I'm going through, my best friend says my midlife crisis. I think I'm past that, but I'm just at that point now where I'm just, I'm looking at things a little bit differently. I live vicariously through my young friends. They keep me crazy, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm glad I did it better than most, or as I like to joke with them, like I did better drugs. We had better sex and better photo shoots and better music. Everything was better, but it's not the same anymore. And I'm okay with that.
Evolution. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on. It's been a great interview, and I would love to have you back if you ever want to come back. It's been fantastic.
I can rant all day. I'm just told you just like one chapter of my book.
I know.
My friends down in Australia asked me if I would write a book, and I said, he's a writer. I said, you can write it. And we talked about it. I just said, but I go, you do know if you do write a book, it'll be like a really sad book. It won't be a feel good book. It'll be a lot of tears. He's like, you don't want to write that book. And then he said to me, and a few friends have said to me, you need to do a movie like Almost Famous, instead of the young writer, the young photographer.
Yeah.
That's my story. Right. I always joke, my movie will be called Not Even Close to Being Famous.
Self-deprecation is your specialty.
It keeps me sane. But I tell people all the time, that's why I say people, my whole career, my whole life, I'm just a photographer. I just take pictures. I work hard. No one's outworked me ever. But my pictures, that's another thing entirely different. That I'm like, I tell people all the time, I dare you, I'll put my body of work up to any fucker on the planet, period. And who can say out there, all you photographers, that Chris Cornell wrote a song about one of your photos? Chris Cornell wrote a song about one of my photos. Case closed.
True.
I rest my case.
And I mean, and as timely as things are real quick, is Gwen Stefani and No Doubt got back together. So now you had all those pictures when they were just young musicians. A young band.
Yeah, that girl Gwen made something of herself. I was impressed.
Yeah,
she's done okay. When I met her, I thought, oh my God, who is this girl? She's cute and she's the nicest person. I put her in my top 5 nice ones. She's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Nice.
Period.
Nice.
I put her right up there, and it's a coincidence, but I put her right up there with Dita Von Teese.
Okay.
I've known Dita for 20 years, and Dita, both from Orange County. I don't get it, but the nicest people you'll ever meet.
I have to say, because I follow Dita on social media, but
have you seen her live?
No, I have not. I have not had the pleasure, but I will.
I tell everybody this: if you don't go see her live, she's doing a residency in Vegas right now, but she tours. See her, one of the best shows I've ever seen.
I will say I was blown away when I saw her with the long straight hair and not in her normal persona. I was like, who the hell is this? And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. I met her. I always tell this story. I'm sorry. See, we can ramble, but
I know, that's fine.
last one. But when I met her, she, at the time, this is 20 something years ago, she was like the Cindy Crawford of burlesque and fetish, right? Like she was the supermodel. Every girl wanted to be her. And I met her and I just said, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a photographer. I would love to shoot you. I think you're beautiful and amazing. I'm like, being all cheesy and stuff. She just goes, just give me attitude. I'm really busy. I don't really shoot that much anymore. I said, okay, well, I just asking, but I got to ask a question. She goes, what's that? I go, who do you like in music? Who's your favorite music person? And she just goes, oh, my favorite is George Michael. Really? What a coincidence. She goes, why? I go, well, you might have seen some of my photos. She goes, why? I go, well, I did all the Faith Tour stuff and the picture of him with the guitar. She goes, really? No way. I said, so would you like to shoot with me now? And she goes, yeah, when can you shoot? I'm all like, thanks, George. So I did the first shoot with her at her house at the time down in Orange County. And I brought her one of the George Michael Faith t-shirts and she's like, oh my God. And the sad thing was I when George died, I gave her a huge print for her house of George, one of them framed and everything for her house. I love Dita. She's one of the nicest, bestest people you'll ever meet and an icon and just amazing in every possible way.
She seems like
everybody should go see her show live. I'm not lying. It's beyond entertaining.
I've seen clips of it and I think it looks interesting. It looks amusing. And I wanted to drag my husband when he was around, but he's not here anymore. So maybe one day I'll go by myself.
I'm just saying, if you see it showing up around your area, you will just have fun. Like, I'd known her 20 years and then saw her show in Australia. I took my best friend, I have to say my best mate, Mia, who's I'd love to death. Her and her family are like family to me. But I took Mia to see the show and I'd never seen her perform before. It blew me away. I literally was like, oh my God, Dita, you're the best thing ever. So it was amazing. We had a great time. Then I shot her 2 days later.
I mean, I'm going to say this, that the only time I've ever really been blown away, I went to a show because I knew the guy who was doing percussion for the Spice Girls. He was actually also in charge.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't a Spice Girls fan. I know, how could I get through the 90s and not, but I went to the show. And after watching them perform, I was like, I was sold. Yeah. Because
I've had that happen. I've had that happen a few times with a few artists where you're like, do I have to? And then you get there and you're like, oh my God, this was a lot of fun. And you just, we all have our little guilty pleasures, It's okay. I won't tell.
Well, I just told my whole audience. So, you
just lost your street cred.
I don't know that I've ever had any street cred.
Thank God haven't lost mine just yet.
I have some street cred, but it's not any cred that anybody wants. So, Yeah. So I thank you, Chris, for coming on, and I'm going to close off the interview and catch you next time.
Thank you.
Hey, Donna from the Better 2 podcast here. If you've listened to my show, you know that it always sounds great. That's thanks to the guys at Third Ear Audio Productions. Third Ear Audio helps podcasters, broadcasters, musicians, and business owners get their important messages out to their audience. Rich and the Third Ear Audio team are easy to work with. They're efficient and understand that your message is important to you. With quick turnaround and the true caring of your needs, Third Ear Audio is your go-to for any audio message. Reach out to Third Ear Audio at 312-388-5596. Rich and his team will deliver for you. That's 312-388-5596. Or you could email them at info@thirdearaudio.com or visit them on the web at www.thirdearaudio.com. I hope you guys enjoyed Chris's interview. It was very interesting for me because this happened and came together really, really quickly. I reached out to Chris on Instagram. I started following him about 2 years ago when I was writing I had finished Love Is Worth Waiting For. And I was kind of stuck. And suddenly this guy who I wrote about in the book, Russell Langford, he wanted more. And in my mind, he was Michael Hutchence. So he's loosely based on Michael. And I mean loosely, but he looks like Michael. So I started digging around on the internet for inspiration. I wanted some really good pictures of him. And I discovered Chris's pictures, his photographs. And I was like, well, these are pretty cool. And they're very interesting. And as you saw in the podcast, because I did put a couple in there, that way you know what we were talking about. The pictures, well, they are very interesting and very inspirational, I would say. Anyway, but besides that, Chris has some interesting stories, and then most likely he will come back eventually again, because I like when I have a rapport and I can have a good time with a guest. And I definitely had a great time talking to him. I think that if you haven't checked his workout, you should. As I said, most likely if you look at anything in the 90s as far as musicians and music, maybe not totally, but a good bit, you're going to see that Chris photographed them. Even actors. Actors, there are, if you had Maxim magazine, there's a chance you saw Chris's pictures in there. So he has a very diverse portfolio. And at the time, he was pretty big deal. He was a pretty big deal. And truthfully, he's still a pretty big deal. Just nobody recognizes that. And that's really unfortunate. We didn't really touch on that too much. But it's like with anything, it's like if you hit a certain age, well, there's hotter people out there. Are they really? Because when you really look at his body of work, you can see the creative potential there. And guess what? It's not enhanced. It's not photoshopped. So when a picture can really speak to you without all the enhancement, you can get something amazing from it. And I think he still has that ability. I hope he gets his exhibition at Madison Square Garden, because that would be amazing. It would be a great gift. If you enjoyed the show, it was a great show. I enjoyed it immensely. And I thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. But I also have to thank Fast Susie for the intro music and the outro music. I have to thank Rich Zai of Third Year Audio Productions for doing the sound. And I thank my guest, Chris, for coming on the show. And I greatly appreciate his humor and his wit and all his knowledge. So thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you want to be a guest on the show, drop me a line at Donna@better2podcast.com. That's Donna@better2podcast.com. And I thank you for tuning in, whether it be evening, morning, afternoon, weekend, whenever you're listening. It means a lot. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.